Hello, everybody. It's Max with Crypto Talk Now. On our live show, we talk about, for instance, these 4-year cycles when it comes to the likes of Bitcoin. And if anything, while it may seem popular to hop on the bandwagon, if you will, with the whole thing of the bull run's not going to happen until 2024, 2025, you cannot ignore the data. So, for the last month or so, we had, of course, an outline basically getting into just that, the 4-year cycle, and what that entails. There's an update in regards to this that I want to share with you here on this particular video. So without further ado, let's jump into today's Bitcoin 4-year boom cycle coverage. So I'm going to go ahead and full screen this, and I blew it up big time for you guys to see it, because there's some areas on the particular graph. I have to admit, a lot of this, I have to read it verbatim, because on this particular one, I don't want to skip literally anything. And of course, there'll be some more commentary in that regard. But check this out. This is from a premium service that I pay annually for called Investor Place. Shout out, of course, to Luke Lango and Charlie Shrem. A little background on the two if you don't know who they are. Charlie Shrem is part of the Bitcoin Founders Club, if you will. He has literally been into Bitcoin since it was $5 back in, I think it was like 2010. He's also credited as being one of the first miners ever for Bitcoin. There's even a video, I believe, on CNBC a long time ago where it shows him using a graphics card to mine Bitcoin about roughly, 10 years ago or more. On top of that, Luke Lango had done work for the Los Angeles Dodgers, data analytics, as well as the Philadelphia 76ers. I will state this much. These guys, 9 times out of 10, have been more right than they have been wrong. So I just want to throw that out there. All right. Now, again, this was posted on December 3rd, but I thought I'd go ahead and show this to you all. So I know a lot of people are basically wondering, when the heck is this darn bull run going to happen? So it says, for instance, we know all of you are busy this week with the holiday preparations, so we'll keep this short and sweet. And just like you see right here, weekly update. Forget FTX. Are you ready for the coming boom cycle? I know I am. This crypto winter has sucked, but let's face it, ultimate buying opportunities, not financial advice. Now, the set dates right here, plain as day. While all the headlines in the crypto world seem to be focused on FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried these days, crypto traders have moved on surprisingly quickly and quite impressively from that fiasco. And we believe that's a strong signal of the coming boom cycle in cryptos. I feel the exact same way. And I also feel like I'm in the minority on this one. But again, I'm going to look at the data. I'm going to show you guys. And if anything, you draw your own conclusion on how you feel about this. So it says Bitcoin actually had a great week this past week, powered by dovish commentary from the Fed's own Jerome Powell. Basically, was it the Wednesday before last, after testing and holding its post FTX support level, basically around that 15,700. We touched that level a few times. You mentioned on the live show. In late November, of course, Bitcoin surged above its post FTX resistance level, right around 17,000. And currently speaking, Bitcoin is sitting right at just at 17,028 at the time of making this particular video. On top of that, it says, sure, it's just a short-term price action, but it's notable given all the negative media attention on crypto these days. When risk assets perform well, when risk assets perform well in the face of bad news, that's usually a sign it's basically the bottom is in, or it's basically close to that. Some people feel as though that this could crash, of course, to 12K. I get it, but again, for the purposes of this video, you'll definitely want to stay to the end. Because if anything, we're going to show you a lot of data to show why I personally feel, and of course why Investor Place personally feels, that we're entering into the next boom cycle coming up in 2023. So this right here, it says the short-term technical picture on Bitcoin is positive and quite impressive given the fundamental headwinds. Basically, you see right here, for instance, where it says bounced off of post-FTX fiasco support levels. And then, of course, you see, for instance, in the green where it says broke above post-FTX fiasco resistant levels. You know, again, you got to look at the particular data. Just because we break certain resistance, doesn't mean we're still going in the downtrend. Now it shows, for instance, these particular headwinds, and if anything, we're gaining new support levels. So it says, for instance, we think the bottom is either in or very close to being in for Bitcoin. We also reiterate our thesis that cryptos will soar next year, very much like they soared in 2020. Again, refer to these 4-year cycles. Our rationale has not changed since last week. We see the economy materially weakening and inflation significantly falling over the next few months, which will set the stage for the Fed to pivot on its monetary policy, leading to a crash in treasury yields and expansion of money supply. Crypto boom cycles tend to happen when rates are going lower and money supply is moving higher. We will have those exact conditions in 2023 ahead of another Bitcoin halving in 2024, which we believe sets the stage for enormous gains in the crypto market next year. Yeah, 2023. That's been our thesis for weeks now. Me personally, I'm just going to throw it out there. I feel as though that this is all going to start kicking into high gear probably late March, especially like one of our own frequent watchers. Shout out to, for instance, Brian Dowie, who's pointed that he thinks it's going to be March 20th. And again, that's in line for when the ISO 222 mandate comes in. So, like they mentioned at Investor Place, that's been their thesis for weeks now. It remains our thesis today. This past week, though, our bull thesis gained significant corroboration from the Fed chair and bond market. With respect to the Fed chair, Jerome Powell, he said on Wednesday that the Fed will likely slow its pace of rate hikes this month, and that interest rates likely won't go much higher in 2023. Sure, that's not much, but it's something, and something is better than nothing. Slowing the pace of rate hikes eventually leads to a pause, which eventually leads to rate cuts. The pivoting process has begun. Just look at how the market thinks rates will trend next year. Traders are betting that interest rates are going to collapse. And you see a little bit that like that right here. Higher and near peak, but steeper fall. Of course, that source is from Bloomberg. It says that's incredibly bullish for cryptos. For instance, meanwhile, in the bond market, long-term treasury yields are starting to fall. The 10-year treasury yield topped out at 4.3% a few weeks back. It finished yesterday at 3.49%, down more than 80 basis points from its peak. Top of that, leading economic data implies that treasury yields are going to keep crashing. The U.S. ISM manufacturing PMI has collapsed over the past few months into contractionary territory, which was basically below 50. Every time this has happened over the past 50 years, listen to this, the 10-year treasury yield proceeded to drop significantly over the following few quarters. Excuse me. Even during the era of sky-high inflation in the 1970s and, of course, the 80s. Now, on this specific chart, I tried to zoom in as much as I could, states every time over the past 50 years that the U.S. economy has slowed like it is slowing today, according to the ISM manufacturing PMI, long-term treasury yields stage a sharp drop. 2023 will either be the first time in 50 years that the treasury yields don't drop alongside a plunging PMI, or treasury yields will plunge next year. A little bit more in regards to this. It says, in short, treasury yields are starting to crash, and the data suggests they'll keep crashing throughout 2023. I may be wondering, how does this even make sense? Well, for instance, that's incredibly bullish for cryptos, right? We're getting to that right now. It's because Bitcoin has almost perfectly anti-correlated to long-term treasury yields over the past year and a half. The chart below graphs the inverse of the 10-year treasury yield alongside the price of Bitcoin, with a 10-week leg on just that, Bitcoin. The two lines correlate almost perfectly, meaning that changes in the 10-year treasury yield have been a nearly perfect leading indicator of changes in the Bitcoin price. And when we look into that, as you can see right here on this particular chart, it says specifically, Bitcoin prices have been strongly inversely correlated to treasury yields in 2021/2022. If yields crash in 2023, Bitcoin prices should rise sharply. And one of the key things I want to outline here, when it comes to some of this investigative research and so on, you're dealing with some professionals that you have here from the likes of Investor Place. Again, look at Luke Lango's background. He went to Caltech. He's done work for the Philadelphia 76ers, Los Angeles Dodgers. Again, data analytics specifically, right? And on top of that, I believe at one point he was like even in the top 50 for best stock pickers, if you will. The guy has a brilliant background. He's a brilliant person. Says, let's connect the dots. And it states for more than 50 years of economic data, says that the treasury yields are going to plunge in 2023. Treasury yields have been perfectly anti-correlated to Bitcoin over the last 18 months. If treasury yields plunge in 2023, then Bitcoin should soar. We think that is exactly what will happen. So like it mentions, I know it says forget FTX. Let's face it, none of us are really going to forget FTX. But let's focus on the positive outlook for 2023. Like it mentions, forget SBF, forget Terra, forget Do Kwon, forget it all. I'm not personally going to agree with that statement. I'm not going to forget it all. But if anything, I'm going to put it in my rear view. I'm going to look more for the future. It says the fundamentals strongly suggest that cryptos are prepping for a boom cycle, like we have outlined here at Crypto Talk now. Oh man, we must have done like an ongoing series that highlighted at least 4 or 5 times in regards to these boom cycles. Again, that's why I advise all you guys, especially if you like a live show, check out our live show. You know, we have a really welcoming community. On top of that, it says as opposed, I should say, to worrying about whether or not Sam Bankman-Fried is a crook or an idiot. Let's just position ourselves to profit big in the coming 2023 crypto boom cycle. And of course, there's some portfolio notes. I'm going to save that, I should say, for the live show. I'm going to come back into the frame here briefly. Give me just a moment. But if anything, you know, guys, it's just that, you know, I want to point this out in closing. I love, of course, to be able to share some of this premium content with you guys and so on, because I realize a lot of people still look into Bitcoin. Now, I will state this, you know, there's some crazy price predictions that people have. I've heard as much as the new thing is now 250,000 for Bitcoin and so on. I still feel as though there's opportunity in the likes of Bitcoin. For me personally, I'd rather put my focus on the likes of Quant. And of course, we cover Quant here quite a bit, right? But again, there's still some opportunity. So I also will state this, and I shout out, of course, to Rich at MaximusCrypto. I know a lot of you guys watch him, for instance. He's a great content creator and so on. Even he has made this particular statement, which I'm on par with, and that is, let's face it, at the end of 2021, with the last boom cycle, if you will, the last all-time highs for the likes of Ethereum, Bitcoin, especially Bitcoin, you saw Bitcoin basically go up to 69K. Now, for a lot of people, they got in at that point. Sounds crazy, right? You never want to catch the top because, if anything, if you're entering, right, a position, then a lot of those people got wrecked. For a lot of those people who got wrecked, I feel as though that this may be their last chance to, you know, recover some of their losses, if you will, especially if the thing goes up to 100,000 and exceeds that and so on. But the days as far as Bitcoin still continuing this run, and I get it, I don't hold as much clout as the likes of, for instance, Da Vinci, Jeremy, and so on, right? Bitcoin Maxi, because I'm not, you know, my net worth isn't worth as much as he is, and so on. I will state this: I do agree with Rich at MaximusCrypto, where he has basically stated that the time is going to, not these exact words, but the time is going to run out for the likes of Bitcoin. Why? Because it's not innovative. Don't get me wrong; it's a great pioneering crypto, if you will, right? But again, there is no smart contracts. Maybe that's the beautiful thing about it. I've heard the arguments and so on. But let's just leave with this in closing, because we're kind of getting off on a tangent. At least I am. And that is this. I've stated this many times before. And that is, Bitcoin was labeled, and probably still is labeled, as a hedge against inflation. But in reality, it's a hedge against money printing. Okay? So for me personally, I'm going with the likes of XRP, XLM, Quant, and so on, especially those particular two, XRP and XLM, because if anything, it's backed by what? The digital assets of being backed by gold, being backed by silver. The problem with the United States and our US dollars, since 1971 until present, we got into multi-trillions of debt, right? So for instance, currently speaking, $31 trillion in debt. By 2026, it's supposed to go up to $41 trillion in debt. If we're not going to ever be backed by anything, this is going to be an ongoing problem. You may very well see the dollar collapse. So if anything, guys, there's still opportunity, obviously, in Bitcoin. Recognize what position you may have had in the past and so on, and especially recognize these particular boom cycles. We'll continue to cover the likes of what's happening with this and follow it very closely. So on behalf of myself and the rest of the Crypto Talk Now network team, thanks for watching today's Bitcoin coverage. Like, comment, subscribe if you haven't done so already. You all have a blessed day, and we'll see you on the next one.